Hello and welcome to Smash Hit Sports. I am your host, Cody Rear. Today we're going to be recapping college football week 2. We had an incredible week. We're going to be talking the Scott Frost fire. We're going to be talking Notre Dame, Texas A&M, the whole 9 yards. But if you enjoy this content, love this podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. But boy, what a week in college football. This is, in my opinion, one of the most chaotic seasons of college football we've seen through 2 weeks. I mean, we've had some incredible games top to bottom. It has been an awesome week of college football. Sports betting wise, your boy has been crushing it. Went 7-3 on the week, had a great weekend betting on sports. 7-3 was on college football. We did well in the NFL too. We are positive. I think we were 4-3 or 5-3 in the NFL yesterday. So we did a hell of a job gambling this weekend. So if you want to see all of my plays and everything's on my Twitter if you want to follow there. I also try to post videos on Instagram and TikTok at Smash Hit Sports in both spots. But talk about a weekend. Let's go ahead and hit 3 winners, 3 losers. We're going to talk the winners first. Big man on campus. Starting with number 3, group of 5 teams, specifically the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt had itself a weekend. App State goes into Texas A&M and upsets Texas A&M on the road. Marshall going into Notre Dame. What an incredible weekend for group of 5 teams upsetting the top 10. Tough look for Texas A&M, tough look for Notre Dame. We're going to talk about those games later. But group of 5 and specifically the Fun Belt, the number 3 big man on campus of the weekend. Number 2, the UCLA Trojans. Fight on. I tell you what, there have been, I don't think there has been a better looking offense in college football through 2 weeks than USC. Lincoln Riley knows what the hell he's doing offensively, and Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison, god damn, are they good at football. I am going to be one of the people that say, hey, look, I had some concerns, hadn't played together. We'll see how that roster looks. Wasn't a fan of the offensive line going into the season. They won 4 games last year, and USC looks like a weapon. Now, their defense is a little suspect. Stanford is not exactly one of the greatest offensive teams in the country. They were still able to put up points on that USC defense. They're going to figure out at some point during their schedule whether or not they can stop a good offensive football team, but they haven't run into one yet. USC, in my opinion, looks like a college football playoff team through 2 weeks. Now, obviously, it is still early, right? We aren't even in conference play yet, but USC looks damn good. That was number 2 for the big man on campus. Number 1 for the big man on campus, J.J. McCarthy. Congratulations, brother. You have earned the starting quarterback spot for Michigan. Michigan is one of those programs that is a quarterback away from being a contender each and every year, it seems like. I know they have not had, incredible success against Ohio State, but Michigan has always been at least fairly competent. J.J. McCarthy looked phenomenal this weekend. Granted, it's against one of the worst teams in football in Hawaii, but he looked good enough to get the starting job. He is starting week 3. Can't wait to see what he does. So he's the biggest winner of the weekend, biggest big man on campus. Down bad player or team of the week. There are some teams that were ugly. There were some players who did not play well, and there are some programs that are in a bad spot. And as a Notre Dame fan, well, we'll talk about it. But number 3, down bad player of the week, we're going to go Anthony Richardson. Talked about a guy who has 2 different sides of the coin here. He played at what a lot of people considered a Heisman level against Utah, and Kentucky came in to the swamp and made Anthony Richardson look like a fool, especially in the second half. I think this is probably as bad as he's going to play all season. I like Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be a good player. That being said, tough weekend for Richardson. I think he'll bounce back. Florida, you don't have an easy schedule, my friend. So we'll see how they look. Moving on, down bad conference. The Big Ten, number 2. Talk about a tough week for the Big Ten, specifically the Big Ten West. Ugly. I think there's only one team in the Big Ten East with a loss, and the Big Ten West, talk about just a miserable experience. It just does not look good for them right now. Wisconsin loses to Washington State. We have Northwestern losing to Duke. Iowa lost to Iowa State, little in-state rivalry. And Nebraska losing to Georgia Southern. Just an awful weekend for the Big Ten West. Awful. This is one of, I don't know if I agree with removing the divisions from conferences. I don't know how I feel about it. SEC East and West, look fairly balanced. The Pac-12, they just put the 2 best teams in. I think Big 12 is the same way now. The Big Ten, you got to consider it because holy shit. If I have to watch a 7-5 Wisconsin team play in the Big Ten championship, I'm going to puke all over myself. I mean, that is going to be one of the most disgusting games of football. Give a better team a shot. I mean, what are we doing here? If you want the best, and I understand the history behind it and how you want, both sides of the Big Ten to be represented. At this point, Minnesota looks like the only team that's really got a shot. Minnesota looks good, and outside of that, everyone else in the Big Ten West looks like shit. So we'll see. I am not a fan. It's ugly. It is ugly. We might not have a team from the Big Ten represented in the college football playoff this year if Ohio State doesn't figure their shit out. Although Michigan could do it too, I guess. And Michigan State. I take that back. I rescind that statement. I'm sorry, Big Ten fans. I take that back. But down bad program. Down bad team. The number 1 spot. I'm not going to give it to Notre Dame because I'm a Notre Dame fan and this is a biased podcast. If you don't like it, sorry. I will talk all of the shit about Notre Dame. Give me a minute. That being said, Texas A&M. I understand that Notre Dame's loss was bad to Marshall at home. I get it. But that's also the 3rd game of the Marcus Freeman era. Granted, it is no longer sunshine and rainbows. Freeman's got to win a damn football game to get back on the Irish good side. Jimbo Fisher's been there for how many years? I mean, Jimbo Fisher, you are a former national champion. You talked all of that shit to Saban in the offseason about how, we don't play our players and bullshit to get the number 1 recruiting class. All the good that's doing you. You lost to App State at home. Your offense put up 14 points against a group of 5 team. That is awful. And the worst part is there are quarterbacks on your roster that you at least have to have a small semblance of faith in. You got the LSU transfer behind Hainer. I can't even remember his name. But your offense was that forgettable, so that's why I forget your quarterback's name. Texas A&M, what are we doing? Jimbo Fisher, what are we doing? Make an adjustment. You were tied at halftime, and you decided, it looks good. We're just going to keep sticking with the same offense we've had. Awful. Jimbo Fisher, where do you go from here? I mean, obviously, you're not going to get fired this year because, whatever, but I don't think Texas A&M has the pieces to make a leap. I don't think Jimbo Fisher's that good of a coach. It is what it is. Texas A&M, you don't have an identity right now, and you need to find one because you have one of the most, if not the most passionate fan base in college football. You have to have some sort of identity. And right now you don't have one under Jimbo. That's it for down bad teams and players of the week and everything there. Let's talk about not breaking news, but Sunday, Nebraska announced that Scott Frost was fired. Had they waited 19 days, that buyout would have gone down $7.5 million. Losing to Georgia Southern was so bad that Nebraska and their AD and the staff there couldn't wait 19 days to save $7.5 million. That's how bad Scott Frost was. I'm going to be honest. I thought it was a good hire when this hire was made. Obviously, he was incredibly successful at UCF. He was great when he was at Oregon there as the offensive coordinator. Scott Frost, what happened? What happened? Nebraska, talk about another program without an identity. This is a lost season for you. At best, you're trying to play spoiler, but you aren't competing for a Big Ten West title in what is one of the worst Big Ten Wests we've seen in a decade. What are we doing here? Big Red, you got to figure it out. And I don't mean to pile it on. Here's the issue with Nebraska, and I'm going to be real with you, Nebraska fans. I hate to be brutally honest, but here's the issue with Nebraska. You want to be a team that competes for a national championship. You want to be a team that can compete for a title. I hate to break it to you. We are in the most global or most, from coast to coast football, college football we have ever seen. Highlighted by none other than the USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. Right? This is no longer a regional sport, right? The SEC is the SEC, don't get me wrong. But this is no longer a regional sport. You have Texas and Oklahoma moving into the SEC. Regions are not important anymore. So if you are not going to dominate the Midwest, which Ohio State has for the last several years, what do you have to offer? Because right now you're not putting guys into the next level. I don't know what Nebraska's NIL program looks like. But that being said, how the hell is a team in Lincoln, Nebraska, supposed to compete with USC and UCLA out in California? Like, convince a recruit to go to Nebraska over those two schools. How are you going to do that? What is the offer? Because it ain't coaching. Not right now. So what is it? Is it going to be facilities? Is it going to be what's it going to be? Success? Putting guys into the NFL? Because you haven't done any of those things in a decade. You're in a tough spot. You're in a really, really tough spot because you are competing with a recruiting standpoint. Like, Ohio State's not just pulling from Ohio. They're not just pulling from the Midwest. They're pulling from Florida and Georgia and Alabama and Texas and California. They're pulling from all these football states. Nebraska, you got to figure it out because pulling recruits just from that area is not going to do it anymore. And you have to convince recruits to come to Lincoln, Nebraska, and you have to get a guy who can convince somebody to do it and a guy who can succeed on the football field too. Now, we'll see. Nebraska, I hate to kick a horse while it's down, but you are in a tough spot. You are in a very, very tough spot. The first team in college football to fire their coach this season, I hate to see it. But I'm not going to let you sit there and talk shit because my team was asked to this weekend. Notre Dame. I was at the game. It was a lifeless crowd in Notre Dame Stadium. Absolutely lifeless. We were out physicaled. We were out coached. We were outplayed every step. Our offense is maybe one of the bottom 5 offenses in the Power 5. It was borderline disgusting. And that's with Iowa existing, which, we're going to talk about you, Iowa. Don't worry. But Notre Dame looked awful. They looked awful. And now we're sitting here. We had all this hype about Marcus Freeman. That video went viral of, the players love him. That's great if the players like you. The fans won't like you if you don't start winning football games. The boosters won't like you if you don't start winning football games. You have to start winning football games. And I think what's worse is we went and we lost in OSU and we go, oh, well, we lost to Ohio State, but we didn't get embarrassed. That's fine. We were competitive. You are Notre Dame. That's not good enough. And then you say here, well, we didn't get embarrassed. And then you get embarrassed at home. One of the worst games, one of the worst losses I have seen in my lifetime as a Notre Dame fan. And I was alive for the 2012 national championship. It was an awful game. Absolutely terrible. Marcus Freeman, you got to figure it out. There were a lot of recruits there on Saturday. A lot of recruits saw you lose to Marshall at home. You got to figure it out. You got to salvage your season. You have a game against UNC coming up where they're possibly going to be undefeated. They may be ranked. You're going to have a game against Clemson. You're going to have a game against USC. And you're going to have a game against BYU. You might have 4 ranked opponents left on your schedule. 3 of those could be in the top 10. There is a chance that you play Clemson in the top 10, BYU in the top 10, and USC in the top 10. If you get your ass kicked in all 3 of those games, your tenure might be short. That's tough. That's tough. I don't feel good about the state of the program right now. We will see. It is only 3 games into his tenure. I ain't going to sit here and call the man to be fired. However, we're going to learn a lot about Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame in the next couple of weeks. We'll see. Speaking of a program, we're going to learn a lot about Iowa. Kirk Ferentz, how much balls do you have? Do you have the balls to fire your own son? Because if you don't, you are going to lose your job. That offense, a fun fact, out of every team in the FBS, Iowa has the fewest amount of touchdowns. It is awful. It is nothing short of putrid. Iowa fans, I'm sorry that you have to watch that. It's one thing to lose and at least be interesting to watch. You lose and it's like pouring bleach into your eyes. It's awful. I don't know where you go offensively. Like how there were several great quarterbacks in the transfer portal this year and you didn't get a single one. You're like, we're going to run it back after last year's pathetic performance. And there were, coaches you could have gone out and get to be your offensive coordinator, but no, you're going to stick with the head coach's kid. That's tough. That's tough. Iowa, you got a lot to figure out. You play Nevada this weekend at home. I'm going to go to that game. We'll see how you look. We'll see how the Iowa Wave looks in person, but damn, does that look tough. Arkansas. I want to talk about Arkansas. Arkansas is being absolutely slept on. Sam Pittman is a hell of a coach. A hell of a coach. Arkansas looked great defensively against South Carolina. I know the final score doesn't really, really depict it, but Arkansas's defense was incredible. They punched them in the mouth. That offense, this is the beauty of Arkansas. They know who they are. They are not trying to be USC. They're not trying to be, Mississippi State and their high-flying vertical offense. They know exactly who they are. They are Arkansas. They are going to line up. They're going to be tougher than you, and they're going to punch you in the face for 4 straight quarters until you figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, you're going to get your ass beat. And that's exactly what Arkansas did. They look great. Arkansas fans, you have to be ecstatic. I think they are a top 10 football team right now. They have a lot ahead of them on their schedule. I mean, a lot ahead of them on their schedule. Arkansas plays, I think they play Alabama early October, if I'm not mistaken. So they play Missouri State this Saturday, cupcake, whatever. They're going to go into Texas A&M, and then they're going to play Alabama at home. If you split those games, you feel pretty good. If you win both of those games, Arkansas, we might have a party. And then you also play BYU at BYU. Arkansas might have the toughest schedule in the country this year. They might have the toughest schedule in the country this year and still hit their win total. That's going to be incredibly impressive. Sam Pittman, hell of a coach. Let's move on to the marquee game of the afternoon. Alabama, Texas. This one lived up to the hype. I believe, if Twitter didn't lie to me, which Twitter would never lie to me, I believe this was the most watched college football regular season game in history. What an unbelievable game. Texas, you played incredibly well. I hate the term moral victory. I can't stand it. I think people overuse it, and I feel like it very rarely applies. But you held the number one team in the country, or what was the number one team in the country, to under or within a point after your starting quarterback got hurt. Just an unbelievable effort by the Texas Longhorns. They have a lot to be proud of. Texas, I think right now, as it stands, they should be the favorites to win the Big 12. And if you followed along with my betting content earlier in the offseason, I had them to win the Big 12. So big brain. Love that for me. But yeah, Texas looked really good. Alabama, this is one of the most undisciplined Alabama teams I've seen. But at the end of the game, when Bryce Young needed to put together a drive in order to win the football game, he put together the drive and won the football game. So Alabama did not play their best game, and they still won. So Alabama, relax. You're going to be fine. But we got to tighten the ship a little bit. And that's fine. If anybody's going to get it tightened, it's Nick Saban. He is the best to ever do it. We're going to stick in the SEC. Georgia, you look good again. They should be the number one team in the country. I don't really have a lot to say about Georgia. They looked great. A team that I did not think I would be talking about in a college football podcast this year. Kansas is 2-0 and undefeated. They beat West Virginia in a pretty aggressive fashion. Kansas looked good. Kansas looked very good. That their coach, and I'm not going to say they've elevated them to like a program that people are going to talk about, but they're not a laughing stock right now like they have been for the last decade. Kansas was the college football's proverbial punching bag. Like everybody was like, oh, at least we're not Kansas. Well, you can't say that this year. Kansas has looked good, and their victories looked well-deserved. I feel like, and seeing their players really rallied around their coach at the end of the game, like that's, I don't know how successful player coaches are historically, but it looks like they have a good one in Kansas. Mississippi State, I have in my notes here, Mississippi State is the most slept on team in the country. They should be in the top 25. I don't think there's that much of a discussion about it. The Bulldogs have looked good. They have looked very good. As Arizona's a frisky team, and they went in at night, late night game, and won pretty convincingly, covered the spread there. Mississippi State, Will Rogers looks like one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. They are not getting the respect they deserve, so I'm going to take this moment in the podcast and say, put some respect on Mississippi State's name. They will be ranked after this week. Mississippi State will be ranked heading into week 4. I strongly believe that. People will be talking about the Bulldogs then. Kentucky, Florida fans. Ooh, man, I did TikTok. Florida fans were not happy when I said that they were fraudulent at 12. Hi, Florida fans. I hope you're doing well. Kentucky looked good. And they did it multiple ways, right? Will Levis looked good in the first half. The offensive line and the running backs looked good in the second half. They adapted. They did what they needed to do, and they beat a good Florida team defensively. They look great. Mark Stoops is a phenomenal coach. Giving him his props. He passed Bear Bryant for the most head coaching victories in Kentucky football history. Kentucky, your program looks very good right now. They are, in my opinion, the second best team in the SEC East. And speaking of the SEC East, Tennessee, you went into Pitt and won and covered the spread. It wasn't a great game. Hendon Hooker didn't look incredible. It wasn't as high scoring as I thought it would be, but you went in and won in a hostile environment. The SEC East looks very competitive. Obviously, Georgia is far and above the best team, but Kentucky looks good. Tennessee looks good. Florida had a down week, but they will make some noise. The SEC East looks very, very good. I'm excited. If you're any one of those top 4 teams in the SEC East, you have to feel good about how your season has gone so far. I understand the loss Florida is disappointing, especially after how you played against Utah, right? Your hopes were high. You were riding the wave. You felt great about your team. Anthony Richardson for Heisman. Florida is back. I get it. Losing this game sucks. But if I would have told you in March that Florida was going to be 1-1 after playing Kentucky and Utah in the first 2 weeks, you'd have been ecstatic. So I don't Florida. You're in a good spot. You were in a good spot. Billy Napier looks like a good coach. This game was within reach. I mean, pretty much the whole game. But looking ahead, I don't know how I feel about next week's schedule. I don't think it's as jam-packed as this week. I mean, there's a lot going on. Nebraska or Oklahoma at Nebraska. That was a game that I was excited for. I am not excited for that game anymore. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Georgia at South Carolina. Whatever. Penn State at Auburn. That should be a good game. Auburn has been quietly very good. And normally Auburn fans are pretty loud, especially on social media. Like, they are well heard. They like to make their voices heard. That should be a good game. That should be a great game. I'm really excited for Penn State at Auburn. 3:30 kickoff. That'll be a good one. The 3:30 slate looks pretty good. You also have BYU at Oregon. I think BYU kicks the piss out of Oregon. BYU looked great against Baylor. Looked incredible against Baylor, actually. I think they're going to look great against Oregon. Oregon is, I think they are who we thought they were after week one. I do not think they deserve to be ranked in the top 25. I'm just going to go out here and say it. I do not think they deserve to be ranked in the top 25. It is what it is. I just don't love it. BYU is a 3.5 point underdog. They should not be. We're going to talk about gambling on Thursday. I'm not sure if we'll hit college football at all, but either way, if you follow on all of my social medias, you're going to see all of my plays. They're all free all the time because I do this for you guys, and we are very much up on college football this year. I believe we're up 5 or 6 units through 3 weeks, which has been great. But BYU, you can bet your ass we're going to have a play on BYU. Outside of that, not a ton of great games. Ohio State Toledo is going to be kind of slept on. I like Toledo this year. They're going to lose this game, but look out for Toledo. They're pretty good. Texas Tech, NC State. Texas Tech looked good. They had that overtime victory with a backup quarterback against Houston, knocked off ranked 25 Houston. NC State, Texas Tech should be a good game. Nice little later game, 7 o'clock. But the 7 o'clock game or 7:30 game that I'm really looking for, Michigan State at Washington. Washington is a 3.5 point favorite over Michigan State playing at home. If Washington wins this game, I feel a lot better about that program. This is a program that hasn't been great since they made it to the college football playoff a couple of years ago. Washington has a lot to be excited for if they win this game. They just haven't played anybody yet. So we'll see. But this should be a good game. That's one of my favorite games on the schedule for this weekend. UTSA Texas should be a good game. And Miami against Texas A&M. Hey, Miami, I have been talking all sorts of shit about you on TikTok. Been talking all sorts of shit. You get to play Texas A&M. You get to prove me wrong. You get to go into College Station and make me look like a fool. I don't think you will. I hate to say it. I don't think you will. Trying to look at the line for that game. Can't find it. A&M are 5.5 point favorites against Miami. I think they win by a touchdown, so that checks out. Utah, San Diego State, USC, Fresno State, also some good games there. So really excited for week 3 of college football. Week 2 was great. This college football season has been absolutely electric. And if you have enjoyed college football season and you enjoy the podcast, please hit that subscribe button. If you're on Spotify or on YouTube, either way, leave a comment. If there's something you want me to talk about, leave a comment. Let me know. If you're on Spotify, leave a review. Let me know how you think I'm doing. If you hate the podcast, maybe don't leave a review. Just DM me on Twitter instead. Shit, don't be an asshole. But in all seriousness, I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening each and every week. I have an incredible guest coming for Thursday's show. Should be a good one. We're going to talk all things NFL. So I can't wait. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one later.